Hi, I'm Dr. Stacy Beardsley, Assistant Superintendent in District 65. The purpose of this recording today is to provide some shared background information that was presented in 5 community engagement sessions in the month of April. During the month of April, we went out into the community and met with staff and families to gather input for criteria on possible school closure and consolidation. This presentation shares some of the information as to why we are engaging in this process. At the beginning of our session, we took time to develop a shared understanding as to why we would enter into a conversation about potential school closings and consolidations. The 3 areas where we are developing a shared understanding are finance, facilities, and students, which is largely focused around our District 65 enrollment. Before we move into the details in these 3 particular areas, we want to take a moment and really establish the why for District 65. Entering into a conversation about potential school closings and consolidations is difficult. What we want to be clear about is that we are incredibly proud of the history in District 65 and the work that is done in each and every one of our schools. Even as we are going through a difficult financial time, there is incredible interactions among our students and teachers on a daily basis. Each of our school communities are vibrant, strong, and really incredible places for our families. This is not a discussion about one school or another. Ultimately, it is a discussion about what we as a community and a district potentially may need to do in order to ensure that going forward, we are creating a bright future for our current and future generations of District 65 learners. To do that, we need to make sure that our district has a long-term financially sustainable plan. That is why we enter into these conversations. We want to make sure that we have the strongest, most vibrant schools and communities for our learners. So we take on having a difficult conversation about potential school closings and consolidations. So why do we need to consider potential school closings and consolidations? Number one, we want to ensure long-term financial sustainability. Second, we have school buildings that are in significant need of repair and improvements in order to meet the learning needs of our students in a way that is safe and supportive of 21st century learning. And third, we have declining student enrollment and buildings that are what we refer to as underutilized, but means there's more space than students to justify. Now I'm going to hand over to Tamara Mitchell, who's going to give some more detailed information around finance and fiscal sustainability. Tamara?
Thank you, Dr. Beardsley. Hello, everyone. My name is Tamara Mitchell, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for District 65. I will cover a few highlights about the district's finances in the past and looking forward to the future. On this slide is information that covers our current financial picture and looking forward to the future. On the left side of the screen, you have our operating budget for this fiscal year 25, at $189 million. Not reflected on this slide is our operating revenues for this fiscal year at $177 million. So there is a gap between money coming in and money going out for this fiscal year. Additionally, the district and the board have engaged in $20 million of operational reductions over the past 2 years. That includes $7 million worth of operational reductions that are reflected in this current fiscal year budget and another $13 million in next fiscal year's budget. With those cuts, we still need to do additional cuts to bring the district to financial sustainability. In order to bring District 65 to a place of financial sustainability, we need to engage in an estimated $10 to $15 million of additional reductions that will take effect for fiscal year 27. And why are we here? We are here due to what is known as a structural deficit. What that means is the rate of expenditure growth has outpaced the rate of revenue growth. Over the past 5 years in District 65, the rate of expenditure growth has exceeded the rate of revenue growth by 2.3% on average. and I will turn it back over to Dr. Beardsley to discuss our facilities as well as our students.
Thank you very much. So, shifting to facilities, we're going to provide a little more information on the state of our District 65 facilities. District 65 currently consists of 18 school buildings, and we will be 19 school buildings upon the completion of Foster School. And that is between 1.2 and 1.3 million square feet of building space, which for learning and work. Our schools are spread out over a total of 8 square miles. Our attendance boundaries overlap with Evanston Township, so include a portion of Skokie. The average age of our buildings is 79 years. And I'm going to give a little more information on the nature of those buildings. We conducted a master facility plan, which is essentially a building audit where architects and folks go to the buildings and assess the state of the buildings and the amount of need. This was done in 2021. At that point, they identified over $200 million worth of work, and they built a plan for essentially $188 million of recommended work over a period of 10 years. That would be on average about $18.8 million per year of work, which is significantly more than we can manage on our current budget. On average, we spend about $1.3 million on capital work annually. Additionally, with the master facility plan, they calculate something called a facility cost index. That facility cost index is the total of recommended work to be done on the building over the estimated cost of replacement of the building. They then put those percentages on a scale anywhere from excellent all the way down to replacement. Every one of our buildings, with the exception of one, is categorized as poor or very poor. Very poor is one step above replacement. The one exception in our district is the JEH Admin Center, which houses our early childhood as well. A couple other pieces of information to have about the buildings. Currently, 4 of our 18 buildings are less than 50% ADA accessible. And when we look around at significant expenses on our buildings, over 25% of our buildings are considered to have roofs that are unsatisfactory and are in need of replacement. And the reason we bring that up is that is an example of a particularly expensive cost, well over $1 million per building. It also creates an opportunity that if we could address that, we maybe could move into opportunities around solar or other areas to move into green energy and possible energy cost reductions. When we move to students, what we're really talking about here is enrollment. The current enrollment in District 65 as of October 1st was 6,193. That is essentially compared to our peak enrollment in that 2016-2017 window of 7,559 students. And so a very significant decrease from that peak to where we are currently. We did conduct a demography report in 2021 and 2024. A demography report is essentially a report that looks at census trends as well as real estate trends and other key identifiers and projects or forecasts your enrollment going forward for the next 10 years. That report essentially called out a few things for us. It said that they're forecasting our enrollment to continue to decrease over the next 10 years by 7.3%. That decreases at a more gentle slope than we have been experiencing and bottoms out really in year 8 of the report and then picks up at a very small amount in years 9 and 10. Couple things also to note there is that we do hear from families at points, is it that the number of students are decreasing in Evanston Township, or is it that we are enrolling fewer students? Part of that demography report essentially took the census data and took a look at the number of students that are available in each of the different age groups. At the point of the census, they went from 14-year-olds down to students that were 0 or 1. When we took a look at the number of students that were available in 14 at that point of the 2020 census, there were 1,056. All right. When we backed it up to students that were more in the like 5-year-old band, there were 886. And then when we looked at 3-year-olds, we were down closer to the 700s. And so the thing to note is that there is a decrease based on that demography report and the census data in the number of students that are ultimately available to be enrolled in District 65. The other thing that we've looked at is our enrollment percentages, and that's included in the demography report as well. And essentially, we see that the median of percentage of students enrolled has increased over the past 3 years, and that is an increase of about 3%. And that median is drawing closer to our pre-pandemic enrollment levels. We're within about 1.5 percentage points. And so we are not enrolling all available students, but we are closing that gap to pre-pandemic enrollment levels. All right, so this slide essentially captures a summary of the three buckets of information that we're really trying to um, share to develop a shared understanding for why it is that we are going out into the community and engaging in conversations to develop criteria for potential school closings and consolidations. I'll pause for a moment. All right. So I am now going to hand over to Melissa Messenger, who is going to share with you kind of where we are going in the process, and then we'll come back with a timeline.
Thank you, Dr. Beardsley. I'm Melissa Messenger. I'm the Executive Chief of Communications for the district. So we've received a lot of questions throughout this process, and as we've discussed the need for potential closures and consolidations around what is the process going to look like, who's going to be doing the work, who's responsible for approving it. So we created this graphic here to describe how the work's going to be completed over the rest of the calendar year. So we have had an open nomination process for several committees that were formed. These include parents and caregivers, community members with expertise or passion, as well as staff members. They're focused on three areas: finance, facilities, and student programming. Ultimately, these groups will meet bi-weekly through the remainder of the calendar year and will be focused on doing the critical work in each three of these areas. Additionally, they'll take all of the feedback from the community and staff sessions that we've held and use that to create scenarios and recommendations. Ultimately, these three groups form what's called the steering committee. We know that all of this work is really interconnected. You can't make programming decisions without knowing that they're financially feasible. You need to know that the facility decisions we're making fit into the short and long term financial plan for the district. So all three of these committees will come together throughout the course of the year and do the work to ultimately create the recommendations and scenarios that will be presented to the Board of Education. So the school board is ultimately responsible for any decision making related to any potential school closures or consolidations. It's not within the purview of the superintendent or within these committees, but the responsibility of the school board to ultimately approve any closures or consolidations in alignment with Illinois School Code, which includes required public hearings when and if that time comes. Additionally, we know that we wanted these committees to really be the individuals who rolled up their sleeves and did a lot of work. And so we wanted these committees to be manageable. They have about 15 individuals on each, but we recognize the importance in our school district of having representation across our school communities. Dr. Turner hosts what's called our Student Superintendent Parent Caregiver Advisory Council. This group meets on a monthly basis and has now 16 schools that are represented on the council. These individuals have said that they are willing to go out into the community within their schools to share information and talk about what's happening. So information is going to get passed and forth from these three working committees into the Parent Caregiver Advisory Council, kind of a check and balance to ensure that the information is being represented, how it's landing, if any course corrections need to be made. And ultimately, all of the work is rooted in stakeholder voice. So the 5 community sessions that Dr. Beardsley referenced earlier, all of that information is being analyzed. We have some independent analysis underway by Northwestern University, who's going to support us in providing a report to these committees as well as to the school board and community. And we'll be bringing our community back together throughout the course of the calendar year, different sessions within our schools, out in our community, community coffees, surveys, etc. So please be on the lookout for opportunities to get involved in this process through the remainder of the calendar year. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Beardsley, who's going to share more about some next steps in the timeline.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, slide of. Thank you, Melissa. So on the slide, we share with you essentially our timeline. One thing that we want to be clear about with the community and in this presentation is at this point, absolutely no decisions have been made. We ultimately are striving to reduce an additional $10 to $15 million from our expenses. This may be done through school closures and consolidations. It could be done through other paths. It could be done through a combination. But at this point, no decisions have been made about school closings and consolidations. As you can see on the timeline, April was our stakeholder engagement. We're sharing with you elements of that presentation in this video. April to June, we will be really working on the feedback from the survey and the community engagement through our committees, ultimately to bring forward categories and criteria to our school board with weighting that they can ultimately review and approve. Those categories and criteria with weighting will be fed into a development process for scenarios that are shared out with the school board and the community in the September to November window. Should we be moving forward with school closings and consolidations? Our initial timeline right now shows us with board decisions in November and school board required public hearings for closure in December.